I'm David Zeller, president of the American Club in Hamburg, and we've assembled a few people here that have to do with the Chicago-Hamburg sister city relationship. Charlene Sobey just joined. She's from the Chicago side. Tony Chambly is a filmmaker in the United States. We have Dietrich here, who's also from the sister city committee here in Hamburg. Rolf and Christoph are Hamburg ambassadors in Chicago. Wolfgang Messinger is the current Consul General in German Consul General for Chicago in the 12 U.S. Midwestern states. He's the successor of our speaker today, Herbert Quelle. Also, we have Yogi Repman. Good to see you. Herbert Quelle, as most of you probably know, was the Consul General for, as I said, for Germany for the Midwestern U.S. states. And just so I can list them all, it was the states of Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Wisconsin, and I might have missed one or two. Did I miss one, Wolfgang?
13 states from North Dakota
13
to Kentucky.
states now. Okay, North Dakota as well. Great. Herbert Quelle was the Consul General from 2014 till just 2019. He has a fascination for the harmonica, and I think somebody in the sister city was it not Charlene, but one of the other people just told me they weren't aware that you were an author, and Herbert has written this book called Monica's Blues.
It's really
fantastic read, and really recommended. Yeah. Yes, and I was really struck with Herbert because we all think of the harmonica as sort of a toy, or I picture like Stevie Wonder playing it, or people that would just pick it up now and then, and it'd be always a great addition to all types of music. Is big with the blues and had such a huge impact in the United States. But I was really surprised to learn from Herbert that there were that the instrument not only hailing from Germany, but it's been exported 250 million times to the United States. Most of that traveling through the port of Hamburg. As I said, Hamburg and Chicago being sister cities, there's a very strong connection here. So I would like to just now pass it over to Herbert to go ahead and start your presentation. Let us hear about the harmonica.
Thanks to the American Club, first to you, David, for hosting this, inviting me and making this possible. And I welcome all viewers, most of whom I think 95, 99% I know personally, which is great. So in a way, I have to maybe change my notes because I'm preaching to the converted, but we'll see how far we get. There's still some person maybe who might join us another person from Minnesota, from the Twin Cities, but several from the former district which I covered. And it's great to see you, Wolfgang, in the crowd out there. Hope you're enjoying yourself. So at the beginning, I would like, nevertheless, and falling back in my old habit of official presentations, but still I think it's necessary. I would like to express my sympathies to people on both sides of the Atlantic who have lost relatives and friends due to the coronavirus pandemic, and to all those whose business is badly affected. And I'm thinking especially of artists who cannot entertain us live at this moment. My dear friends, be assured we will eventually get through this global crisis, and hopefully with some lessons learned. Until then, please do not fall victim to conspiracy theories. Keep a safe distance from people who are not in your household. Wash hands frequently and do not despair. Now to my topic. All of my adult life, I have been a supporter of strong transatlantic ties. I've spent a total of 10 years in the United States, and I believe and I know a little bit about the German-American relationship. In this context, the harmonica is something very special, and its importance is mostly unknown and it is underrated. What I will be talking about in the next few minutes is, in a nutshell, the following. Germany produced the hardware and the United States produced the sound. And the port of Hamburg was in the middle. Let me use a modern term. We are looking here at a classical win-win situation at its best. David, if you could change maybe the main picture that I see. I have Chris Lichtenfeld in front of me and he's fumbling around with his headset all along, so that's a little confusing to me.
That could just be on your screen though. It should be, you as a speaker should be.
Now you're good, now you're in the bill. I rather face you.
Yes, that's why I'm keeping everybody on mute so that they don't pop up there.
Okay. So a throwback to the 1960s. Come on, let's go here. Where's my C harmonica? Harmonica in the key of C. I think you all recognize, unless I play too badly, a song by the Beatles, iconic riff by John Lennon, which was performed 1963, so 1 year after the Beatles had this famous stay at the Star Club in Hamburg. And the mention of this English group is just one example for the multifaceted role of Hamburg. At the time of ocean liners up to the mid-20th century, it was the most frequent port of entry for American artists performing in Germany or other European countries. The Hanseatic and Free City of Hamburg was also a sought-after location for performances by artists. I have the letter by an Austro-American vaudeville artist from the United States. His name was Arthur Torelli. He was born Arthur Stern in Vienna and immigrated to the United States in 1909 and had a very strong relationship with Hohner. He was one of the first endorsers of this German manufacturer of harmonicas. And this letter is from 1925, where he has a 1 month stint at the Hansa-Theater in Hamburg. But most importantly, Hamburg played a role as probably the predominant shipping port, and you mentioned that, David, for harmonicas manufactured not only in Germany, but in Europe. And we are speaking about the origins of German-speaking lands, which is not equal to Germany today, because it goes back to the early 19th century. So the peak of harmonica exports to the United States lies in the 1920s, a decade in which about 100 million pieces were bought by customers in the US, 25 million in 1 year alone. The demand in the United States then was almost insatiable. Thousands of harmonica orchestras had sprung up around the country, some with 100 or more players. Some smaller groups were quite successful, like, for instance, Bora Minevich and his Harmonica Rascals. He became one of the early endorsers of Hohner and later switched to a supplier from Saxony. The show these groups performed were quite entertaining and demonstrated the possibilities of playing the harmonica in a virtuosic, if conventional way. They used these ensembles used all shapes and variations of the harmonica, chord, bass, chromatic, and diatonic harmonicas. And if you have questions concerning the different types, I'll be ready to answer them after I finish my introduction. The really interesting development for the future of harmonica playing happened, however, unnoticed by mainstream white America. I'm talking about the playing techniques of the African Americans. The harmonica is the third most important instrument in one of the genuine American contributions to the immaterial world heritage, namely the blues. And it's funny, actually, that Cuba, for instance, this is a sideline here, that Cuba has been successful in having the rumba registered in this UNESCO immaterial world heritage, but the United States, to my knowledge, has not even tried to this point to have the blues registered. anyway, I may be wrong there, but it is not in there and it should be there. And so first was the voice, then a string instrument like the guitar, and thirdly, the harmonica. And this harmonica came from Germany. Although the instrument was developed in the 1820s and first harmonicas entered the United States with the waves of European immigration, and again through Hamburg and other important ports from the 1830s onward, the beginning of large-scale production coincided roughly with the American Civil War. Initially, there were three main centers of production in German-speaking lands. And I would like now to share a screen with you. Here we are. Hang on a second. So you should be able to see a screen now, which has 6 sites on it, and I'm using the pointer here. Hopefully this works. So in the south here we have Trossingen. This is Stuttgart. And this is actually about here is where our new Consul General, the current Consul General, Wolfgang Mössinger comes from, here between Rastatt and Freiburg in the Black Forest. And Wolfgang, if I'm pointing wrong, you can later correct that. So here's Trossingen, the site of Hohner, which was founded in 1857. Here is Knittlingen, which is about the same distance, smaller distance to the north of Stuttgart or northwest, but Knittlingen with Hotz. And I can actually show you a Hotz harmonica, which in this package, I hope you can see that the American Ace. So this has a jet propulsion airplane, so it should be from the I guess the 50s, maybe early 60s. And then we have Klingenthal here, which is Saxony. This map, as some of you historically minded may have discovered, is pre-World War I, because you still have the Kingdom of Saxony and the Kingdom of Württemberg with the Dukedom of Baden here. So there's Klingenthal, and right next to to Klingenthal is a little place which is not on the map, Markneukirchen, which I will mention later. And just opposite Graslitz in Bohemia, which is now, of course, the Czech Republic, is Graslitz. And Haidar is important because a special type of harmonica, which is mostly used these days with 10 holes, was developed probably in this area. It's also called a Haidar type or Richter, named after the inventor. And then down here we have Vienna. So Austria had a major manufacturing. Tea is one of the most famous names. So where am I here? The map to the so go continue here. Vienna lost in importance towards the end of the 19th century, and I will ignore it in my further. So let's leave the map here. There were hundreds of smaller or larger companies manufacturing the harmonica at the time. And the manufacturing consists mainly of putting together 4 components. First, you have a comb, which used to be of wood. So a comb with teeth. And those who've read my book know that I use a very sort of erotic intro to the book, which then I do not follow through with that eroticism, maybe to the disappointment of some of my readers, but anyway. So you have the comb, and then you have 2 metal plates on either of the wide sides of the comb, and these have slots matching the openings between the combs, and I will share another screen with you. So make it more visual. No, this is wrong. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. But let's just continue with the description without a graphic then. So you have these slots that are that have about the same width of the slots of the between the teeth of the comb, and you fix reeds on these slots or on the reed plate, and they are swinging freely through the slot, and that produces the sound. And you have different. The harmonica is the only instrument which you can where you produce a sound by blowing and drawing in breath. Blowing and drawing. You have blow notes and draw notes. So then after that you have cover plates that make the instrument possible to handle, and they have various shapes. So with this instrument, I'm using my instrument of choice is a Seidel from Saxony, but I'm not making a commercial for any particular company. I'm representing, as it were, the history of Hohner and Seidel, which are the only manufacturers left today of the hundreds that of early producers who existed. And Seidel is actually the oldest, dates from 1847. In Klingenthal, Saxony, as I explained, and Hohner from 1857, 10 years younger. And in the decades when volume export was high, the Württemberg manufacturers used the services of the United States consulate in Stuttgart to expedite their shipments to the United States. This means they prepared the shipment applying the appropriate tariff and charging the custom fees so that the shipment would not be delayed in warehouse at the US port of entry and could go directly to the dealer. The same procedure was performed by the Saxon manufacturers by a special US consular agent who resided from 1893 to 1916 in Markneukirchen, the place I mentioned, which is just a few miles away from Klingenthal. And the amazing thing is, I mean, I went through the archives of the US Consular Agency, which is in College Park, Maryland, with the United States records. And I spent a couple of days there and went through all these volumes of handwritten thin paper. I think 4 or 5. No, actually, I think it will. I leafed through 10,000 pages or something, trying to find some indication about how the music was assessed by the manufacturers, and I didn't find anything on that, but I found a couple of other interesting things. So back to the blues, which developed as a special genre, and of course African Americans would not call it a genre, they would say it was a way of life. And it developed around 1900, and one author, W.C. Handy, the father of the blues, his autobiography was important for the research for my first book. He speaks about the emergence of the blues, and he speaks about his first encounters of and with the harmonica in the 1880s. So the blues players developed the left register, or the deep octave of the harmonica, and the high octave for playing the blues scale. The blues scale is special, and it is not reflected in as the instrument is built. They discovered it, I don't know, by accident anyway, but they had a special style of playing, and I will demonstrate it again. I'll use an A key harmonica now. And so the harmonica is actually, except from being the only, or apart from being the only instrument where you can produce draw and blow notes, or produce notes by drawing and blowing music, the only instrument that, or the smallest instrument with 3 octaves. So you have a left octave, the deep octave, and there the players developed this or used the scale in a special way by discovering that you could bend the notes. So a typical blues tune is a spoonful. And so on, and then in the in the upper octaves, they over bent the notes, so the blew a little harder, and that meant that you could actually then bend the note down, also get the flattened third and fifth, which are typical for blues, and of course the flattened seventh. So that sounds a little more squeaky, especially on the sound system. The instrument makers had actually assigned the deep octave only an accompanying function, which means that you should maybe slap your tongue or have a special breath function. So when the immigrants came to the United States in the mid 19th century, some of the tunes popular at the time were Auf du junger Wandersmann, for instance. So you hear a totally different sound, and this is because this was made originally for mostly blowing notes, and the accompaniment is not used in this way in blues, and you have many more draw notes there, so that produces a very peculiar sound, and that's why I speak of the sound formatting role that the African Americans had with regard to the music, rather than those huge orchestras that used the typical way of producing sound with this instrument. So more innovative, more leading into the future was the blues and everything that developed from the blues, like the jazz. And so the first blues recordings date from 1925. And blues musicians since the 1930s are recorded, and there are interviews that demonstrate that or prove that they appreciated Honor harps. And in the book that you introduced earlier, David, in Monica's Blues, which you have to open it, actually showing that the harmonica is holding the United States in its grip, as it were, and the artist covered here is Billy Branch, who is a Chicago harmonica player, friend of mine, and I'm covering this subject mostly. When did the instrument, the harmonica, first get into the hands of the African American player? There are names like Sonny Boy Williamson, 1 and 2, Big Walter Horton, Little Walter, Junior Wells, Howlin' Wolf, and so forth. And today, Billy Branch and Sugar Blue. Chicago was the center for that. And I know that there's also quite a notable blues scene in Hamburg. And I will come to one name in a moment, ties up the entire story. So used in jazz, the instrument was by Larry Adler, who had to escape the United States in the McCarthy era because he was considered a communist, and a very sad story. I mean, not for his musical career, but as far as his relationship with the United States is concerned. And then John Sebastian. And these players, they used a chromatic harmonica, which is different from the diatonic harmonica that I played here, and just grabbing into my harp case here. So this has a slider, and this produces the chromatic, the half notes, by just using the slider. So this is different. It's bigger, and it also has, other than the diatonic, this one has 12 holes. So Larry Adler, Toots Thielemans, and these days Henrik Merken in New York, they are famous for using chromatic harmonicas. And of course, Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is a great chromatic harmonica player. So I would claim that without the ingenuity of these blues players that I mentioned earlier, a genius like Howard Levy, and that is another friend of mine from Chicago, Evanston. This is Howard in his DVD set Out of the Box. So he just in the late 60s and 69, he had the idea, when he had the diatonic harmonica, which he fell in love with after having been trained on the piano and being a great piano player. He said, why is it that I can only play the chromatic scale in the left hand of the left side of the harmonica, and why can I not use it for the entire harmonica? So he actually was the guy who went to extremes by his embouchure, because you're producing the sound between your lips and your diaphragm. That is where the energy comes from, and the shape of your tongue, which makes on a C harmonica from an E flat tone, and from a B flat tone. Just special techniques that you have to learn in a very hard way. I mean, some of the notes that I can play these days, it took me like 3-4 months to produce. So Howard Levy developed that, and he is able to play on the C harmonica, key in the harmonica in the key of C, all 37 notes of the entire chromatic scale on that instrument, and thereby also he just needs one harmonica, not a diatonic in the key of C, in the D or E or A or B or what have you. He can play any sound, any tone, any key on that harmonica. Fantastic. So one example where the Americans outdid, I would argue, the manufacturers and the ingenuity of the manufacturers. So just a little intro, not as never as good as Howard Levy could do it, but just to show you that initially there are only 5 notes on the left-hand side of the harmonica. And by bending and overblowing, you can play all chromatic 12 notes. And so forth. So with that technique, you open the instrument to jazz. And without Howard Levy, this guy here, Konstantin Reinfeldt, who is another friend of mine and who studies, surprise, surprise, at the Musikhochschule in Hamburg. And he won the Opus Classic last year in the category of harmonica. For the first time, the harmonica, the diatonic harmonica has entered the realm of the concert halls with crossover jazz and classical through people trained by American musicians like Howard Levy, played on German instruments and taking it up. So this again illustrates this fruitful bilateral relationship via this instrument. So I'm coming to my conclusion here. For almost a century, the harmonica provided jobs for thousands of German workers. And the main customer, the main country that made this possible was the demand in the United States. And it brought prosperity for small German towns. The quality from Germany has been the envy of many, and it still remained principally unchanged construction-wise, but it is used in context and for music the inventors would never have imagined. Today, Seidel and Hohner have roughly 30, respectively 110 jobs only in Germany, and are regularly present at major instrument and harmonica-related events in the United States, like at the Society for the Preservation and the Advancement of the Harmonica and NAM, and you name them. The quantity of the past, as these figures show, is no longer there, but the names of these makers connect German industry with great American musicians, and German harmonica players have received creative impulses from American musical developments. Without German products, Americans could not have optimized their skills, and without American music, German makers would have been out of business for a long while already. I hope I've been able to prove this love affair, as you, David, correctly titled this talk, and that this love affair has been a typical win-win at its best. And I think we're living at a time where we need to appreciate that there is actually win-win in trade relations. And having said that, cheers, my friends, and I'm appreciating a little sip here.
Cheers, Herbert. Thank you so much for the
floor
presentation.
is open to questions, of course.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Herbert, and how aware are Americans, in your experience when you were there? How aware are they that the harmonica, that Germany's played such a huge role in their sort of their folk music?
Very unaware, and that's why I decided to write the book. I initially wanted to just do a little exhibition, and then I noticed people said and thought that this instrument came from the American South, and they did not even know that it was made in Europe, let alone in Germany. And but the same unawareness or unconsciousness of this exists here in Germany. And that's why I've just finished the manuscript of my second book, which is now in German. And I've consulted with a new friend from Berlin of mine, and his name is Sören Birke, and he published this book 25 years ago, Maulhobel, Zauberharfe, Schnutenorgel, eine Kulturgeschichte der Mundharmonika. It's very short and sort of fragmented, but he's now the CEO of the Kulturfabrik here in Berlin, which is a famous institution. Mm-hmm. And of course badly affected also by the pandemic. And we both we sat together and chatted, got to know each other, and he has actually read the draft of my manuscript, and he says, what I'm trying to raise the awareness of the importance of this instrument by putting the story of the harmonica in relationship with the United States in the context of what happens today. So the hero of my first book, Walter, travels with his African-American friend, James, to Germany. And I wanted to have it take place in April this year, but I had to redraft the entire script because it would not have been plausible. You cannot travel in April between the United States and Germany. So I had to set it back to April 2019. And I had to change some of the stuff because Walter and James are dialoguing about the election in the United States. They're dialoguing, they're talking about emerging anti-Semitism or increasing anti-Semitism, populism, racism, xenophobia in Germany. So I had to throw some of the incidents that happened in the course of the last year, the attack on the synagogue in Halle, which was in it in the first draft, and the Hanau attack on Muslim immigrants potentially, and all that. And but it's taking place in April 2019, and so they travel to the sites. They travel from Frankfurt to Stuttgart, then to Trossingen, then over to Klingenthal, and they visit the factory, and then they go to Weimar and Buchenwald, and there you have the contrast between horror and classic. Schiller and Goethe on the one hand, and a few kilometers away, one of the notorious concentration camps. And then they go to Berlin, and so far they have been lucky in that travel, although James was afraid that he, even as a tourist, might encounter racism, but he falls in love with an Afro-German on the first day, so Afro-German lady, and we're talking about prejudices around the concept of being German and what color you can have, what is typical. So I speak to all these subjects in the book, and then in the end, the hero Walter, not James, not the African American, in a pub in Berlin, in the city where you would expect this least, Walter becomes the victim of a right-wing attacker.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a little story told around that, and the latest research, not only the one from the College Park in Maryland, but also at the Hohner Archives, 2 visits there are thrown in, and so the story of this virtuoso player Arthur Torelli comes in, and that's so I hope to find a publisher, and then we'll see.
That sounds great. I mean, since the story is so little known as far as the harmonica in the United States, I think there's huge potential for the storytelling factor there, and as you say, also here in Germany. That's why I also invited a friend of mine, from a Hollywood producer, Tony. He's on the call just so he could hear you, because he and I are also working on a film project from a little earlier in the 19th century, and also deals with slavery topic and European redemptioners. And I think that this could also be an interesting, we'll talk to you later, a later point about this, because it sounds like it could be also something for us to see if we can help with the story. I haven't taken, now if anybody has questions, please write in your chat that you have a question. That way we can sort of take them in order. I have like to go first to Niels for his question, and then afterwards to Joachim.
Yeah, first of all, Herbert, thank you for giving us these insights. I had no idea. I knew that it's a historic German instrument, and that it made its way around the globe. But to this extent, I think it's mind-blowing. A little thing like that can be dominating a whole genre around the world. But I was missing one instrument in particular that it's on the cover of the second book you showed, I believe. It's like the big one, I think it's called Hohles Liebling. It is huge harmonica with 2 rows of holes, many holes. And I play a little bit far away from your proficiency, but that one I really love. And I wonder, with what you said, where it fits into the history and also from the musical aspect, if that's been used in the US for anything, or if that's more like a historic instrument.
No, that all these instruments were used for the harmonica orchestras, and still today, if you go to the harmonica conventions in the United States, the one that I mentioned, I'm a member myself of the Society for the Preservation and Advancement of the Harmonica, which will take place in August in St. Louis again this year. And there are these instruments up to this length, almost. I think the longest is about it's almost a yard. I mean, you should never stand next to a chord harmonica player, because he will be shifting around with this instrument, just blowing this chord here and then switching over there. And then in between you have these, and that's the types of harmonicas I mentioned. The bass harmonicas, they're smaller, and you have these winders.
Yeah, the double-sided I meant.
Double-sided is, yeah, I've one here, I was just looking, but it's another place in the house. I unfortunately don't have it here. Double-sided, but the double-sided, or maybe it is, let me just check here. Hang on. Did you think of this one here? It's not so huge. I mean, it's this side, but it has
exactly that one.
Okay. So this is the Echo Lux, and it has 2 chords in 1 or 2 keys, G. So you can play C in the key of C on one side and the key of G on the other side. Yeah, but on these instruments, you can actually, on this echo, you cannot produce the bending notes that are typical in blues. You have to have this Richter type harmonica, or Haidar, this place I mentioned on the map, which has 10 holes and 20 reeds, 10 for blowing and 10 for drawing.
Well, that's a relief, thank you, because that means it's not my lack of proficiency, which it might also be, but it's actually so thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you.
I have all your beautiful photos on your retirement party playing for us on your harmonica. So if you need backup images, I can send them to you again, which I did send to you before. My question is, I don't know if you can see the chat. You know, I happened to actually drive by Halle the day they had the attack, which was October 2020, on my way to Leipzig, when they had the 30-year memorial for the peaceful revolution. And so my question really is your character and your story a fiction? Because how can you otherwise make the dates be right? If you traveled 2019 April, you know, so a lot is fiction or not?
Yeah,
okay.
No, the story is fiction, the story that I tell, but the research content referring to the harmonica is based on fact. It's just copying the letters that I found and drawing conclusions from the letters. So it's a hybrid between in German you would say Sachbuch and Belletristik.
Okay, wonderful. Looking forward. Yeah.
Okay, Karina. Let's follow the people that have. Some people have asked for questions. We'll go to Joachim. Are you there, Joachim?
Yes.
Okay.
Moin, moin. Lieber Herbert, great talk as usual. What is the story? When did you get your first harmonica? When did you buy your first harmonica, and why? What was the moving force to get started with your life legacy and passion?
Well, a typical story. I got the first harmonica from my parents as a Christmas present. And it was this style of the echo harmonica, which was just asked about by Niels. And then I discovered that I could not play the music that I wanted to play on it. And shortly, I must have been around 13, maybe 12. And then 2-3 years later, which would have been around 66, 67, 8, or in that area, I got my first blues harp, and then I was imitating. Funnily, I didn't know the African American players first, but I knew first John Mayall and the harmonica player by Canned Heat, and tried to play imitate those songs first.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Joachim. Now I'd like to go to Charlene Sobey in Chicago. You have a question?
Can you hear me? I'm not very fluent in Zoom, so I can you hear me?
Yeah, we
We
can.
can hear you.
Colleen.
Okay,
We can.
thank you. Just a couple thoughts and then a kind of silly question. First of all, unfortunately, the Blues Festival is not taking place this year. It's been canceled. But looking forward, hopefully we will have it next year. And I would suggest you set up a little table there with copies of your book. I think it would become a bestseller. Secondly, David, I see that you are recording this.
Yes.
Would it be possible for you to share the recording with us so that we can put it on our Hamburg Sister Cities website? This has been an absolutely fascinating presentation.
Absolutely.
And finally,
yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And finally, I have a question for Consul Quelle. Silly question. How many harmonicas do you own?
I have in my small museum, as it were, collection, I have 6 or 7, but I have some reserve harmonicas stowed away, some of which I'm thinking about selling, some blues harps, but the instruments that I have in my case are 17. Which I use. So you need about that number. If you maybe you can do with 12 or so, but I would say that would be the minimum if you go on stage somewhere, because somebody would shout that this next song is in the key of D flat. And I mean, if you don't have the appropriate harmonica, then you're just unfortunate you can't play. And I go to clubs like I did in Chicago. I mean, it's of course limited at this moment, but I think that answers your question, and you have to accommodate this situation by carrying around quite a few harmonicas with you.
Okay. How about, does anybody else have a question or like to say hello to Herbert?
Maybe I just want, if there's no question, I just want to say again, so if any of the people in Germany who are want a copy of the book, you don't need to go to Amazon, because getting it from the United States is very expensive, especially these days. I don't know if you can get it because it's not printed here. But if you want a copy, just send the request to David. He will forward it to me, and then I will send you a copy. It would be, I do a special price today, 20 euro, including postage.
Oh, that's great. Thanks so much, Herbert.
That's actually cheap.
Just let me do a final send off with my harmonica. All my friends in Hamburg.
Thank you, Herbert.
Great job.
Just unmuted everyone so that you can hear everyone's applause here.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you can do that.
Thank you, Herbert. That was very
Right
informative.
here.
Thank you. Thank you
you.
all for joining. Thank you, Consul General Mussinger. It's real special that you could get on in your early morning there, or late morning there. Thank you all. I just wanted to remind you, we are doing, this is part of our online series here at the American Club. We're doing this pretty much intact of a weekly event. We just had, well, we kicked it off when the COVID hit. We actually had planned this for, what, about 2 weeks ago, was it? I think 2 weeks ago, we had planned this event to be at a nice, very nice bar in Eppendorf, which we then obviously had to shift it to being online. So I'm glad we could do this. We began our event with Andrew Adair, our online series. He was an American who lives in Berlin, and he had worked in the Senate, and he's a lawyer, and he gave us a sort of an overview of the political situation in the U.S. That was on March 27th, and you can all see his link. Niels can post. We have the links available for the event. We had the Consul General of Hamburg, Darian Akins, who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. He had a prior engagement, but he sends his regards. He spoke on April 1st. Did a fireside chat, which is also available to see. We also did a wine tasting live, which was a lot of fun. And then we had Minister of the Bundestag, Metin Hackverdi, just last week on the 28th, to also give us a sort of behind the scenes as what's going on regarding COVID and politics, and how are decisions being made these days. What's the sort of, what's the mood right now at the Bundestag? Need a glass of water.
Maybe just to add, we've
Niels.
added the videos on our website, americanclub.de, in the blog section, so you can find them there.
We will also, our next event will be on Tuesday with also Chicago again, Sister City theme. Adler Planetarium will be celebrating its 90th anniversary. And Adler is one of the predominant planetaria in the world. Hamburg as well just had its 90th anniversary last week. And so we will use the anniversary to link up several stakeholders in the Sister City relationship. So Tuesday at 7 p.m. Hamburg time, noon in Chicago. So hope you all can join us again. Please spread the word. We will have we will have the Consul General Darian Akins here live, and we will have some people from the Sister City partnership, as well as we will have some recorded statements from Mayor Tschentscher. We're looking to get one from Mayor Lightfoot from Chicago as well, and also Consul General Mussinger has also recorded a statement for us. So I'll look forward to seeing you all again next Tuesday. So everybody stay safe. Keep your distance. This isn't, we're still at the early stages of this virus, so please be careful. Don't be fooled by everybody dropping their guard and opening things up. Keep your distance. It's highly, highly contagious, and there still is no cure for it. So stay safe, and wish you all the best during this period. And until then, until we have really safe conditions and can be convening again, we'll be doing this here online So look forward to seeing you again at the American Club online events. Everybody, have a good
Bye.
evening and a good
Bye.
afternoon in Chicago.